All right. Well, there it is. The whole music that we all know and love by now. I'm glad to have you here, you who may be watching and listening to us, and I'm thrilled to have you here, Dave. Every time we talk, it's fun.
It's a
Uh,
blast, Aaron. I'm glad we get a chance to do this. How are you?
uh, I'm doing great, there are crises. There are crises happening in my company. There are crises happening in companies all over the world. Our Kanye West is having crises. There are crises everywhere. Uh, that's your bread and butter, I know. So I'm excited to be here to talk about 8 ways to deliver bad news to your team without making enemies. There's a reason that the expression uh, "don't shoot the messenger" exists. And the reason is that bad news is something that will often make people feel a little angry, a little violent, a little victimized potentially. And so, because it so often falls to us as leaders to deliver what might come across as bad news, we thought, Dave and I, that we should tell you here are some ways that you can do this in the most effective ways possible, in ways that will strengthen your relationships rather than weaken them. So that's what we're here to do. Dave, why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself to the good people who are watching and or listening to us right now?
Well, hello, good people. It's a pleasure to meet you. Yeah, as Aaron said, I'm Dave Oates. I'm a PR guy. I specialize and focus exclusively in crisis. So I say very crassly, I'm the guy that business owners, executives, and individuals calls when stuff hits the fan. Only I may not actually use the word stuff. And the bottom line is, any organization of any size can get caught in the crosshairs of somebody who wants to take their reputation and do a real trashing of it, because we all carry around these wonderful little devices. And these devices have the ability to disparage an organization because everybody's a broadcaster with a camera, microphone, and through their social media apps and distribution system. So I've been doing it in some capacity or another, starting with the Navy and then in the private sector and nonprofits and points in between for, it's scary to say, about 28 plus years right now, Aaron, that I've been in this in some form or fashion.
Well, that's a good long time, long enough that that people should have some confidence that you know what you're talking about. Um, as you may know, folks, I'm Aaron Schmuckler, co-founder of a company called the Yes Works. We think of what we do as company culture engineering, and what that comes down to includes making sure that you have the structures in place to guarantee that you've got a, or at least come close to guaranteeing that you're going to have an environment where people are thriving. And so is your bottom line. It includes things like leadership development and soft skills training. We've been helping a giant software company recently hang on to employees with hard to find skills, employees that had been leaving within 90 days of starting their employment because they couldn't stand the pressures of dealing with customers. And we've helped them hang on to hundreds of new employees over the last few months. Over the last 7 months, I guess we've been working with them, and nobody's left. So
Wow.
that's been fun.
Wow.
So
Seriously,
let's
nobody's left. That's that's
nobody's
that's
left.
impressive. Wow. Okay.
So Dave, let's give the people what they came for. They came for 8 ways to deliver bad news to their teams without making enemies. We're going to go back and forth. Each of us has 4 suggestions. What is your first tip or suggestion for how to deliver bad news?
The first suggestion I have is soon. And the reason I say soon is because it's like any other type of, news that's uncomfortable, right? It doesn't get any better with age. In fact, it's like fish over time, right? If the
Yeah.
news sticks around without anybody sort of doing anything about it for a couple of days, it winds
Mm,
up just getting even worse. So as uncomfortable as it is, and as much as everybody would just assume to not do that, you know, look at the adage, right? Rip off the band-aid quickly, do whatever, get it out soon. The more longer you wait, even if no one else knows about it, your audiences, right? Your employees, your customers, your business partners, investors, or donors, if you're a nonprofit, will only ask the question, why didn't they hear about it soon? And this probably speaks to the core of a crisis. What happens and why something is becomes one. It's simply because people feel shocked by it. People do not understand what happens. It runs counter to what they know of you. And so
Mm.
delaying that only shocks them further because they thought, they had a relationship with you. And if you didn't tell them right away, they feel disconnected. So soon is the first that I would say.
Uh, you know, that is such great advice. And you're talking about the board saying, "Why didn't I know about this sooner?" Your team will say, "Why didn't I know? Why didn't you tell us about this sooner?" And if you need
Right.
evidence for that, just look at your own responses to when your team brings you bad news. I have heard countless leaders say, "Why didn't you tell me about this sooner?" And so, as you say, it's not going to get easier. It's not going to get uh, more cushioned over time.
Right.
It's gonna be like fish.
Yeah, and I understand why people don't do it, right? You're hoping that there's a chance that it dies down. Well, hope is
Mm.
not a strategy. There's a newsflash for you. And oftentimes it just exacerbates the problem. And you're right. We talk about this from when employees come to us. Let's think about our childhood for a minute. Let me go back to the trauma that was our collective childhoods. When we had something we didn't do, we didn't tell mom and dad early enough, and mom and dad were as mad that we didn't come to them beforehand. And now it's a complete hot mess, and it's going to cost more, or there's going to be a
Mm.
longer fix,
Yep.
or things like that. So if anything, we have examples of what we did as a kid that we should apply in our professional world now, right?
All right, terrific. So, tell people, bring the bad news soon.
Hmm.
All right. My first tip is also kind of something that goes against what might be our tendency. We feel tempted to, in some way or another, try to soften the blow. So don't. My suggestion is don't try to soften the blow. Any form of this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. I really wish I didn't have to tell you this. The kinds of things that we say to mitigate or hopefully kind of create some softer blow are going to backfire on you. They're going to feel to your team like a manipulation. They're going to create this get it over with impression in them. So don't try to soften the blow. Instead, if you may, I'm sure, Dave, you're familiar with Chris Voss and the Black Swan Group and his book Never Split the
Yeah.
Difference, right? And he
Yep.
talks about an accusations audit, which is kind of the opposite of softening the blow. It's preparing people for a major blow. Hey,
Right.
you might hate me by the time I'm done telling you what I have to tell you. And going through all of the things that you might think I'm greedy. You might think that I should have done something in
Yeah.
advance to
Yeah.
prevent this.
Right.
Give them all of the reasons that they are going to uh, think ill of you before you give the bad news. That is a good replacement for trying to soften the blow.
And I get why we're so pain adverse that we try to avoid it as much as possible, even if it's to our own detriment, right? And I love Tom Campbell's quote, in the chat here that we've got. And Tom, thanks for being a fellow APR as I am, accreditation, public relations, and also thanks for your service. I'm prior Navy, and he's in the Army, and he goes, hope is not a course of action, right? Neither is
That's
avoiding
right.
the pain. Sometimes we we are as entities, right? Individuals, executives, nonprofit directors, board members, whatever. We're stronger than we give ourselves credit. Oftentimes,
Mm.
you can take the hit if you are candid and forthright. And don't try to sugarcoat it. Be as transparent as possible because it's going to hurt that much more if you don't. So you want to be pain adverse? Fine. Take the initial pain because the longer you wait on that, you'll have to pay that ultimately with interest and it just hurts more.
Mm. Right. and you build people's confidence in you. You build people's trust in you. The accusations audit, right, that I just talked about, that Chris Voss recommends, yeah, that is a scary thing to do. You think you're putting ideas into other people's head about how
Right.
terrible you are. You're, one of two things is going to happen. They're going to either say, well, at least he knows, or at least she knows that what an ass she is, or they're going to say, no, no, uh, that's not what we're thinking. And either way, you come out ahead of where you would be if you were trying to hopefully hide the fact that they're not going to like this.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point you bring up too, right? And it goes against our default state oftentimes, but it is absolutely the right course of action. Well said.
All right. Uh, Bet is back to you, Dave, for your second suggestion.
The second thing I would say is tell it in multiple ways, or I'll call it
Mm,
multiple channels, right? So we talked about soon, don't sugarcoat. Don't expect that one statement in one channel, right, is going to solve it. Whether that's an email to your employees or it's a, robocall to customers or things like that. A one and done approach is not going
mm,
to cut it. We all receive information from multiple channels, right? We've all got multiple social media accounts. We have email addresses. We browse websites. We've got mobile apps. So, whatever devices and vehicles you use to speak to an audience, of which there'll be multiple, you're going to have to use those to deliver the same bad news. I've seen it where organizations and individuals are like, well, I have to put this out, so I'm just going to put it out this one thing, and I'm going to put it out in this one area, and then I can wash my hands of it. I'm done. I did it. I did what I needed to do, and if they didn't see it, that's their problem. No, no,
maybe I
no,
can
no,
sneak it in
no.
here.
As my wife reminds me constantly, the communications that I intend to people is my responsibility to convey. And so again, sort of going along the line, we're seeing sort of a pattern here, right? With the interdependencies. You got to do it soon. You got to be, don't try to sugarcoat it, and make sure people see it. And that means using the multiple channels. And again, don't leave any stone unturned with that, right? If you may use one channel, but you only use it once a quarter for something like that, bad news, use that, right? Don't wait till the next cycle because you have a schedule that says we do email notices, once a month on the fourth Thursday of every month. Bad news soon, use it, use all the available resources to make sure people hear that. I think that's important.
Yeah, not only if you wait for the regular cycle of release, that here comes our regular newsletter, internal
Right.
newsletter. Not only will that not be soon, it'll be lost because
Right.
that's a part of people's regular pattern. They're likely not to notice it. Whether you like it or not, people are probably not emailing, or excuse me, probably not reading that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's if this is news worthy of your attention, then it's news worthy of its own moment. And to your
Hmm.
point, repetition. I often recommend a podcast called Manager Tools. And what Mark Horstman of Manager Tools says, and I repeat this often, is if you tell your people something 7 times, then half of your people will tell you that you said it once.
Yeah. That's a brilliant point, and I appreciate you bringing that up. How many times have we all said to somebody, "Hey, I didn't see the email," and it might be true. We might not have gotten into it yet, right?
Right.
And now it's 3 hours later that you told them something really nasty, and they're going to be like, "What do you expect? I'm sitting here waiting, on my device for bated breath for your
Yeah.
little banner alert to come up that you sent me an email." No, I got other things
Uh,
to do. They're not like me, who's addicted to this device, and that's a conversation for my therapist. But otherwise, everybody else, you've got to assume that they may only catch it in one vehicle, which is why using those multiple channels are important.
Fantastic. Multiple channels, and I would add as an addendum multiple different ways of phrasing it. Different language.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Great point. All right, to
Okay,
you.
to me. Okay, so if you want my second suggestion is consider the situational context. So if you're delivering this verbally, for example, What location are you in? What is your tone of voice? What day of the week is it? Who's around? And what's next? You know, if you're delivering bad news, for example, letting somebody go, do they have to? Uh, are you in a fishbowl, your conference room with wide open glass, and maybe they can't hold back the tears, and not only are they getting this bad news, but they've got people who are watching them.
Hmm.
Consider the situation, consider the context. If you're delivering somebody bad news like that, are you going to send them out of your office with red eyes? Or, as I would prefer to do it, whatever room you do it in, uh, you be the one to leave. And they can have the room for as long as they need it. Considering the situation, what's going to happen for them afterward? What time of day is it even is something that is important to consider here. And I'll come back to letting somebody go because this is an easy example. If you're letting somebody go on a Friday, what are they going to do with that fact that they've just lost their job for the next 48 hours? There's very little that they can do. That it's going to be hard to reach out to your networks to try to their network to try to uh, line up the next bit of employment. So letting somebody go earlier in the week so that they can immediately start to activate their networks. So this is again just a piece of consider the context, not for you. I think Dave and I are both suggesting that this is not going to be easy for you. We are not here to make this easier for you. We're here to give you tools to make it more effective and easier for the receiver.
I appreciate you bringing that up, Aaron. And maybe if I could add sort of context to the topic here.
Of course.
It's a great title that you have in there, which is 8 Ways to Deliver Bad News to Your Team Without Making Enemies. It doesn't mean that the tools in which we're suggesting are going to make you friends. It's not binary, right? It's
Right.
not, hey, you're not going to make enemies, but you're going to make friends that you and whomever else, to use the example of letting go, are going to be all kumbaya, and this is great. Maybe I've seen situations where somebody's just, finally figures out that they're not happy in their job and they get empowered to go do something that they love. And that's great, but you can't expect that.
Mhm.
What we're trying to do here is to give the audience, right? The employee in this case, or if it's bad news about a delay in a product fulfillment, your shipment's going to be delayed a week or something like that, that they at least know that you care about them and that this isn't something that you are conveying with any either casualness, right? You're just, well, this is just the way it is and you just have to suck it up, or unfeeling or things like that. That this is something that you would rather not have happened. And I think that's as important as anything else. So, right, time of day, if and certainly within the color of what you need to do, and how you convey that is important. But yeah, I think with the audience in mind is a great perspective. Thanks for bringing that up.
You mentioned your last one was about the channels. Mine is
Hmm.
what just now. My second one was about the context.
Yep.
Definitely related, and the trap that I just got concerned about, folks. You may have seen a few different CEOs recently conducting mass layoffs on LinkedIn or even by Twitter. Do not do this. Do not do this for their sake. And if you don't give a crap about them, don't do it for your own sake, for the sake of your own reputation, for the sake of your own future career, and for the sake of the success of your company. Don't let people go by text of any kind.
And it happens so often, it boggles my mind. What was the one? And now I'm having a brain cramp. There was about 4 months ago, where there was a company. It was in the real estate. I think it was a mortgage business, where the CEO laid off people on a Zoom call.
Yes.
Literally, they all got on the Zoom call. It was supposed to be regular, and he's like, "Yeah, half of you are gone as of the end of the day. Thank you very much." That is so impersonal and such out of context. And now you put everybody else on the spot, because it gives the appearance that it was a convenient vehicle by which you can do that.
Uh,
And that's
oh man.
that's that's asinine. And oh, by the way, the CEO wound up having to step down as a result of that. Oh, good
Sorry,
call.
buddy.
Good call,
Yeah.
right? You didn't handle that well. And yeah, this is it's not supposed to be easy for you. And that's just the reality of it. But if you don't try to take the easy way out or don't try to defer the pain, it'll be less painful and less costly for the organization and the reputation in the long run. That's just the reality of it. It's pay me now, pay me later adage.
Yeah. And I know some of you leaders are, and you're probably not listening to this if you're this way, but you've got a kind of a Machiavellian way of doing things. I'm not going to judge it. So I will give you a little bit of Machiavellian advice then here. If you think that it's okay, you get into LinkedIn or you go on to Zoom and you let people go en masse in this setting, and it doesn't matter because the people who are being let go, it doesn't matter what they think of you. It only matters what the people who are left behind think of you. Uh, they are not going to think of you well. They are going to start looking for their next job. They are going to stop giving you discretionary effort. It is going to hurt you, even if you think the ends justify the means, even if you are strictly Machiavellian looking for the outcomes will not be good for you. But it turns out, and this is why I love the work that I get to do, turns out that being human and humane is good for business.
It's karma is a legitimate currency that you need to continually bank on because look, we're all human, right? I'm in the communication business, and I will tell you on a personal level, there are people in this world who think I can't communicate for whatever you want to whatever vernacular you want to work at it because I trip up. But when I do, hopefully I
Mm,
own it, and I try to convey with them that my intention was otherwise and fix it. And those who think, well, it doesn't matter what they think, or even letting go. Let's say we sort of talked about the arbitrary, the half that let go, you don't care, but the half that remain. Let's say the half that let go, we're underperforming. We're in the bottom half of your performance um, rankings. It's still not appropriate and also not good for business to discard them because they didn't cut the mustard for the reasons that you stated. The other people will see that and look at it as there, but for the grace of God, go I. And they will say, I dodged a bullet. I'm not doing this
yeah,
again. I don't trust this management team. They're sure as hell not going to recruit anybody to come in. And they're
yeah,
saying, yeah, I'm looking for a way out there. So your talent pool shrinks significantly, even with the good people you brought behind. And the reputation
indeed.
on the street, your competitors will take advantage of that in a moment. Oh, by the way,
Your
especially in
your
this day and
whole
age where it's
team,
hard to find good people.
your whole team are gazelles at the waterhole, right? And
Yes.
just because you're the lion who took out somebody else doesn't mean that they're going to trust you going forward, knowing that you're a lion.
And the water hole or the water coolers kit, guess where it is right now? It's your chat icon. It's Facebook
Yep,
Messenger. It's WhatsApp. It's all of those
yep,
things. Even if you're a work from home or you're a distributed company, guess what? That water cooler is going on 24/7 with employees who are talking to each other and going, "Can you believe just what happened?" and blah blah. Blah. And it's as bad as it's ever been because of that. Because
all right.
everybody's a
So
broadcaster.
everybody's a broadcaster.
Everybody's a broadcaster.
We are halfway through our 8 suggestions for you. Dave, what is your next suggestion for the good people at home?
This is really a good transition to what we've been talking about beforehand in context and transparency and immediacy. You got to follow up with some action. If the bad news is bad, just conveying whatever that news was. This is what happened. This is what we need to do. These are the things that we've decided to engage in for whatever reason. Again, you can go back to employee layoffs or product recall or delay in shipment or funding, whatever the case may be. You have to have an action plan, at least a generic one. It doesn't mean you have to
Mhm.
have all 20 steps laid out if you don't know it yet because it's a developing initiative. But showing transparency with context in mind or empathy needs to follow up with action because otherwise the audience that whom you're trying to convey at least an understanding of how this impacts them will not actually be received well and certainly with any credibility unless there's some sort of action plan. So let's take that layoff notice, right, that you just talked about. If there are processes and procedures that you need to engage and need to convey to them about, here's how you get your last payment, and here's how we're going to help you if you need to file for COBRA benefits to stay on health benefits while you're looking at that. And here are some opportunities and some resources that you have to look for the next gig, right? And if you're so inclined, if it's a reduction in force because the position was eliminated, here are some letters of recommendations. Here's some things that we want to do for you, right? Empower those people to realize that what you did wasn't necessarily with any sort of malicious purpose, or was certainly anything personal. It was simply a reality of the world in which you live, or maybe there was something that was missed. But action without empathy without action, right, in conveying of this is just words. So that needs to be part of your communications and delivering bad news. If you don't have empathy and you don't have action, or you just have one and not the other, your effectiveness in being able to communicate will be muted, and your reputation will likely take an unnecessary hit.
Fantastic. Couldn't have said it better myself. And I've got nothing to add, so I'm going to go straight to my third suggestion. Or rather, before I do, let's have a look at what Thomas has said. I always tell leaders, you can't communicate your way out of an issue or crisis. It goes to the old adage, actions speak louder than words. Absolutely. And here, right, the subtle communications, the ones that are underneath the actions you take, they are the ones that rule. They are the communications rather that people believe. You can say
Right.
something, but people aren't
Totally.
necessarily going to believe it. They're going to
Totally.
believe what you do.
Totally. 100%. You're spot on that.
Thanks, Thomas, for your input. All right. So my third suggestion for you, and in some ways we've covered this a little bit, and it's enough couple degrees off of some of what we've said before that I think it bears digging into. Be direct, be clear, be unambiguous. Do not beat around the bush. Soon, right? We've talked about soon. We've talked about not trying to soften the blow. This is related to both of those, and it's just say the thing. What is the thing? Here it is, right? People will sometimes say, hey, if you work for me, Dave, if I come to your desk and I say, hey, I need to talk to you later, can you come by my office around 4:00? What's going to go through your mind for the rest of the day?
Not work. That's for damn sure, right? I'm gonna be thinking about the fact that it's 4:00. It's on a day, and I'm like, this is not good. If they want to tell me something at the end of the day,
Yeah,
it's usually something bad that they don't want a lot of people around,
yeah,
or they want to be able just to end of the day. So I absolutely think that's not good. So whatever else I had going on between now and that 4:00 time frame ain't getting done, and I'm stewing on this one there. And now I'm coming up with a narrative in my head that may or may not be accurate, or certainly over embellished to whatever the news might be.
right.
Yeah, if you're ready to do it, right? This goes back to sort of the soon thing. Be direct, be candid, be forthright, and that sort of then dovetails into do it soon. So,
Right.
like I had a situation where in a previous life where I was a marketing head of a software company, and the CEO would deliver bad news, and I always knew it was bad news because he would walk into my office and say, "Hey, you got a sec?" But I knew, but he was like, he'd walk in and say, "You got a sec?" And I'm like, it's longer than a sec, but you need us right now, right? And he'd go, "Yeah."
Right.
And we'd sit down and we'd talk about whatever it was that was the issue, right? And it was great, but there was no like, "Hey, have you got a sec in 3 hours?"
Yeah.
I've already stopped whatever it was I was doing. Let's have the conversation right now. And so I appreciated that about him.
And I'll rearticulate also unambiguous. If you get two sentences in to delivering the news and people are looking confused, they're looking like they don't yet know, they're kind of like leaning in, hoping that you're going to get to the point sometime soon. You're failing. You are doing this wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to let you go. Looks like, hey, we're going to let you go, right?
Right, right,
This is
right.
your 2-week notice.
Right.
understand you're going to be leaving, or this is your
Right.
last day working here. It
Right.
is not, this is not a time to be nice. This is a time to be kind. And the two things are not the same, right? This is
I,
about kindness, about clarity. Who was it who said clear is kind?
yes. Yes. I think it is. As long as it's done with some sort of empathetic tone,
Right.
right? It's not done in sort of some callous nature. So I'll give you an example. It just came across my computer a couple of days ago. I got this call through a referral. It's a professional services firm, and I'll leave it at that, where the managing partner, so there's about three partners. The managing partner, who was the face of the agency, passed away unexpectedly over the weekend of a heart
Mm,
attack. And the company and its partners were not sure what to say or how to say it. And the first thing that I asked them is, well, what are you doing? What will you do today if one of the clients of this managing partner or one of the faces of that calls you and say, well, we've got this person that'll be in line and this person will field and this person. So, okay. So here's what you need to say, right? You need to announce in the first one, the sudden and unexpected passing of this great leader, and you've lost a friend. The second thing you need to say is how the
mm,
client probably feels that they've also lost a trusted friend because this person had been, the face of a lot of their clients for decades and was one of the founders of
mhm.
this firm. And here are the people that were trained by them. I said, you've got to do it now, right? And
Right.
they were really reeling from it, partly because they lost a colleague and a friend. But I said, the longer you wait on this, the more people don't feel connected. You've got to give them, as much as you're feeling angst, I guarantee the client will feel angst on this one there.
Mm.
So get that out and do that now. So yeah, it's not just even layoffs, right? The uncomfortable, unforeseen circumstances that come across my desk, and that's just one example that happened 2 days ago.
And so if we knit that into some of the other suggestions that we've made, right? You said immediately, right? That's your initial soon.
Soon, yeah.
Um, I didn't hear you try to soften the blow at all. You said we've lost a great leader and friend, right? Then there was you talked about empathy. You've lost a great friend and an asset. And then to your earlier point about action, here's what we're doing to make sure that this doesn't hit your business like it's hitting your heart.
And if you do that, you give people not only the insurances that they're safe, right? Sort of the hierarchy of needs that we talked about. Once you've established their security, they will respond in kind. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you for that information. What can we do for you? And I've seen that time and time
Mm,
again. If you have good customer relationships, good client relationships, good business partner relationships, and you announce how what has happened in action to them, the response will be absolutely that much more to you favorably because you've articulated this well and soon. You don't do that, they'll start worrying about themselves before they worry about you, and that's just the reality of human nature.
yeah.
I'm not a
Well said.
sociologist, I'm certainly, but that's how it works.
Well said. And they will start worrying about themselves before they start worrying about you. Reminds
Yes,
me of Simon Sinek's book Leaders Eat Last, where
yes,
the
yes.
thesis of that book essentially is your team, if they do not feel safe, supported, and as if the company and its leaders have their best interests at heart, they will be neurochemically prohibited from acting in the company's best interests instead of their own.
Yeah, I recognize some people didn't have necessarily solid family upbringings. I go back, we talk about like follow your childhood, like examples from your childhood, right? When mom or dad were making dinner, yeah, for your who did they serve, right? Whoever was making dinner, when did they serve themselves last, right? So the Simon said that's because your needs came before them, and it's the same in business and nonprofit and others. If you ensure people that you've got their interest at heart with a bad news, they will respond with at least empathy toward you, if not then coming to your aid.
Right.
A big Christmas movie, right? It's a Wonderful Life, right? George, George, George makes sure everybody's got a loan. The bank's about ready to close, and people dump money into the bank, and the angel gets his wings, and everybody sings hallelujah. But it's the same. But you get my point, right? I mean, it's
Right.
it's it's that human nature. Got examples that we can use. This isn't rocket science.
So we're almost to the finish line here. Each of us has one more suggestion. Dave, tell the folks how and why they might get a hold of you.
How you get a hold of me is through a whole bunch of ways. If you Google Dave Oates Crisis PR, my LinkedIn profile shows up, my Twitter feed shows up, YouTube channel. My website is public relations, that's plural, publicrelationssecurity.com. And I seriously, on my contact information page, you can schedule a 15-minute call with me. If you've got a emergent matter, something's bubbling to the surface, you want 15 minutes just to bounce an idea off of, to the extent my calendar will allow it, I will be happy to do so because I love what I do. And I will tell you, that's the kind of thing too, to the fourth point that I would say you've got to have in communicating bad news, which is the ability to receive feedback, the ability to hear what other people are saying for that. So I'm hoping people take advantage of it with me.
So what then, Dave, is your final suggestion for people?
Be Have an open ear and be ready for feedback, right?
Hmm.
Saying something one way is not only unrealistic in this day and age where everybody can chime in whether you had asked for it or not. Part of the ability to deliver bad news is to give the audience, right? Employees, customers, partners, investors, donors, whomever, the ability to communicate back to you and to
Hmm.
express not only what they, their feedback and their feelings on what you said, but also ask for clarification. If you don't allow that, the audience will feel disconnected, disenfranchised, voiceless. And this is where I also see, in absence of that, that fear and anxiety of that audience will increase and it will convert to anger, and they will channel it through their available communication needs, which again are these wonderful little devices that we're all carrying around. And they will do so through their Facebook and their Twitter and their Instagram and their TikTok and LinkedIn, whatever, talking about you and your organization and how they feel like you just threw them under the bus.
Again, it was so well put and so kind of completely put. I've got nothing, I think, to add to that except
I'm
to
glad for that.
emphasize how important it is.
Good.
Uh,
I'm glad I answered your question. Anyway,
before
you're up to you, sir.
before we get to my last point, we've got an interesting comment here from Malta, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name okay. Essentially saying, okay, Simon Sinek says leaders eat last. If you're not taking care of people, then they will be neurochemically prohibited from acting in the company's best interest. And then you've got Robert Kiyosaki, who says that you've got to pay yourself first. I don't, and I'm interested in your input on this as well, Dave. I don't see these two things as being mutually exclusive.
I don't
Um,
either, and yeah, I don't either. Malta's a great
to,
guy. I know him, but he
so
makes a good point.
say why you don't see these things as being mutually exclusive.
Well, you need to take time to ground yourself, right? I've got another matter where there's a client that's got a matter that's turning into a legal issue, and it's quite frankly driving him into the ground. I'm generally concerned that this small business owner will literally flame out as a result of this one. There, he's so personally caught up with that. There is a time when I've told him, look, you got to shut it down tonight. You need to take time for yourself. Whatever you do to relax, whether that's watch TV, read a book, go for a walk, go to dinner with your wife, whatever, do that. Please take care of yourself. But that doesn't mean that in those moments of sort of grounding yourself and getting some perspective, you're still not looking at the needs of others first and the genuineness of that in a bad, in a crisis situation. But I will
Mm-hmm.
suggest to you that I've seen organizations that again avoid the pain because they are afraid of their own needs over and above the audiences, right? The employees and customers. And
Yes.
in doing so, they create greater pain for themselves in the long run. And maybe that's where I leave it, is by taking care of others and being candid and forthright about delivering bad news, as we've been talking about, soon, transparently, with proper context in the eyes of the audiences, with feedback and action, and the other points that we made, you're actually doing yourself a service
Mm-hmm.
because you're reducing the amount of pain you will feel if you do things otherwise. Aaron, what do you think?
Everything that you've said, and I'll add, there's also that book, Profit First, um, and it's so this is not about my needs come above yours, so much as it is understanding this. Just like moms, right? Moms have got to take care of themselves and get enough sleep, maybe not as much as would be great, in order to take care of their kids. Similarly, if you as a leader aren't able to put food on the table, then you are not going to be able to lead your organization. If your company goes out of business, then it's not going to be able to employ anybody. And so if you need to lay some people off in order to save your business, this is in some ways paying yourself first. Then what you're doing is preserving your ability to support the folks who
Mm-hmm.
who remain, and
Right.
conceivably to support the people whom you're letting go.
Right.
And this actually,
Oh.
I think transitions beautifully into my final point. Before I get there, let me tell you, uh, you can reach me very easily. I'm the only Aaron Schmuckler on LinkedIn. Uh, theyesworks.com is our website. So you can find me in either one of those two places. And why you might want to reach out to me. I have leaders talk to me and they say things like, I've got great people on my front lines and I've got great people supervising them, and they are at each other's throats and I don't know why. We can answer that question for you and we can solve that issue for you. I've got leaders who tell me things like, I am uh, demonstrating what accountability looks like every day. And leading from example isn't doing the trick. Why are my people not accountable? Not as accountable as I need them to be? That is a question we can answer and we can help you solve it. Or why are my people leaving? To my point earlier about this software company that we've been working with, that is a question that we likely can answer for you, likely help you solve. My last point, and this dovetails beautifully with what Malta brought us, is give wherever you can. How can I help you win? So, for example, I remember a CEO of a startup company that I was working with called me and she said, I've got to let my chief product officer go. We're pre product still, and he's just not delivering like I need him to. And we've been talking about his failure to deliver for a little while at that point. So I said, okay, right. You're the CEO. You get to define reality like that. So the conversation begins with, as you know, you've not been delivering what we expected, and that hasn't changed. So this is going to be your last day with the company. That takes less than 30 seconds. That's done. Now, Mr. Chief Product Officer, how would you like to go from here? How can we help you win from here? And that might extend to questions like, how do you want to let the team know? Would you prefer to tell them, or would you like us to tell them? Her question to me was, how do I prevent him from being able to sabotage the product and being able to sabotage our fundraising efforts? My answer was, wrong question. What you want to do is help him leave in ways that he doesn't want to do those things. So how do you help him win from here? And I've seen people say, Dave, this is your last day working for the company. However, you're going to keep drawing a paycheck for the next 30 days, and I want you to let us pay you to go find your next opportunity. Right? That's the kind of generosity. How can you give if you've got to, as Malta says, Robert Kiyosaki suggests, pay yourself first in order to keep things running? Then what is the level of generosity, and what are the ways that you can be generous in delivering your bad news?
In that example, I look at it as an investment. So if you want to be a cold hard numbers cruncher, right, that the
Yep.
investment in that individual for an additional 30 days is so much more valuable, and cutting it off right there with, again, the reason a crisis is a crisis in many respects is because it's surprising, right? It's unexpected. And being able to soften that to some degree and allowing that person to say, you know what? Yeah, it was an economic reality. I get it, but they really tried to do right and give me as much of a cushion as they could, is so important. I've had to
Yep.
lay off people, right? And I did that. I gave them not only a couple of months notice, before we made that change. I gave them a severance package afterwards, and they are still good colleagues who've actually referred me business over the last several years for that one there, right?
It
And it
is an
wasn't because,
investment.
right. So it was look, there was a, there was a big, nice, fat check that I wrote for some folks, but it certainly has paid itself in dividends. So I speak from experience on that. And look, Aaron, I know you and I know each other through a networking group that says it's, we're a give to get idea. It's the more you give, the more you get. Again,
Yeah.
karma being that currency. Malta are actually members of Rotary in San Diego, and Rotary International, which is 1.2 million people around the world that subscribe to the mantra of service above self. And again,
Mm,
that doesn't mean that we put ourselves last, but we recognize the reality of the world that we live, that it is so much more lucrative for us, not only just, emotionally, but profitably, economically, by
yeah.
giving to others and including for that there. And so
Yeah.
that is a mantra that I hope other people will subscribe, whether or not they join Rotary or not. But if you want to join Rotary, contact me. I'm happy to refer you in. But my point is this: I think that's hopefully where we leave it. Right? Is make sure in the communication of bad news that you put others first. You do it quickly, and you do it with the idea of a pay me now or pay me later strategy, versus a pay
Yeah.
me later strategy. And look, all will work out. We're stronger than we give ourselves credit, and we will get through this if we do this right.
We're going to wrap up here in a minute, and I love that you brought up the numbers. So I want to dig into the numbers just a little bit, because I was in a room full of CEOs who asked me to come in and work with them uh, just last week, and I don't remember how it came up, but this same concept of paying somebody for 30 days to go and find their next job. And I didn't say I'm suggesting this. I'm saying consider this. And one of the CEO said, right off the bat, his knee jerk, as you might imagine, was, "Oh man, I mean, if I'm letting somebody go, there's no way I'm going to pay them for 30 days." So let's just say that this is a person who earns what a racist city council member in Southern California might earn $250,000 a year,
Yeah, you got an example there? Yes. Okay,
right?
I got you.
And so a month's salary is less than 25 grand.
Right.
Right. I'm not very good with the divided by 12, but divided by 10 I can do. So it's
Right.
less than 25 grand.
Yeah.
How much does it cost for you to replace the other folks on your team? Are you one of those leaders who asks me and asks others, what happened to loyalty? Now imagine that you are sitting next to, you're a colleague of this person, and they say, man, I just got let go. And they were so kind to pay me for 30 days to uh, to make it my full-time job to go find my next bit of work. Not
Right.
only is that person now a brand advocate for your company forever, very likely, they just gave their colleagues, every one of their colleagues that they share this story with, they've given them a strong inoculation of loyalty. So what's that worth? I promise you, if you've got two people who hear about this in your company, it is worth more than 25 grand. What does it cost to replace somebody? It's a ridiculously high percentage of their salary. And so this has strong, quick ROI in prevented loss.
Well said, sir. Got nothing else for that one. That was
All
brilliant.
right. Well, folks, that wraps it up then. Our 8 ways to deliver bad news to your team, and as you've heard, to anybody else for that matter, without making enemies. Again, you may not make friends, although
Right.
sometimes you can. Following all these suggestions can help turn what could be a really bad situation into a net gain for everybody. Dave, I want to thank you again for joining us. All you folks who have commented and those who I've been seeing lurk quietly in the background, thank you for being here. I hope this has been valuable, and we'll see you in the next time.